Hi, I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Daniel M. Kimmel, who is, well, I'm going to let you tell exactly who you are because you do a whole bunch of different things. Okay, Dan? So,
I wear a lot of hats.
yeah, you do. You
Um,
wear a lot of hats.
uh,
So,
I'm a lawyer turned movie critic. I haven't practiced law in like 40 years, but I did go to law school and practice a little bit. Um, I became a film critic, and last year was 40 years I've been doing this. I'm now reviewing movies where I reviewed the original that it's a remake of. I mean, that's how ridiculous it is. And as far as books go, I have nonfiction, which is all media related, everything on from romantic comedies to science fiction movies. And then in my fiction, the common thread is that it's humorous. When people tell me they enjoy my books, I go, "Did I make you laugh?" And if they go, "Yes," I go, "Then I did my job."
exactly, exactly. Okay, so Um, you answered my first question, which was for readers unfamiliar with your work, how would you describe what you write? So basically what you write is really humorous.
Humor is a genre fiction, with one exception. It's all been science fiction and fantasy horror related, but always like I did a vampire short story. I was challenged, could I do a vampire story? And I did a short story in which the vampire succumbs not to garlic but to cilantro. That's the way my mind works.
Hmm. Okay. But you do also write nonfiction as well.
Yes.
Is your nonfiction humorous?
Uh, it can be, as I was pointing out. I wrote Jar Jar Binks Must Die,
Yes.
which is a collection of essays on science fiction movies, and some of them are amusing, but basically that's film criticism. That's when I'm wearing my movie critic hat. I've written a history of the Fox broadcast network. I wrote a book on romantic comedies. I wrote a book on DreamWorks. So that's all pretty serious. The one thing that's been interesting for me as a writer, and I've been doing this so many years now, is when people who know me read my books, they tell me they hear my voice. Apparent and this, and I know a lot of writers who I like and I'm friendly with, but that's not always the case. But apparently, I can't help but write the way I sound.
That's interesting. A lot of people don't write the way they speak. They it's totally different.
Yeah.
And and so you say that you write the way you speak. So
Yes, that's
do you,
that's what people tell me. They hear me when they're reading my stuff, whether it's the fiction or the nonfiction.
interesting. So in your fiction, you must have a lot of dialogue.
Yes, yes. That was the hardest part for me as writing fiction. Is In fact, I even make fun of it in my first novel about. I'm not big on all these flowery descriptions. I don't spend a page and a half describing what the room looks like, or what the clothes the people are wearing. I try to give enough description so that people can set the scene, and then I get into the action.
Hmm. Okay. So why don't we talk about one of your latest books,
Okay.
which is the Bride,
Well, yeah. Here we go. Father of the Bride of
Father of the
Frankenstein.
Bride of Frankenstein.
Yes, with a wonderful cover by Alan Beck. See, because the I came up with the title. It was just like a mashup of Father of the Bride and Bride of Frankenstein. I said, "Oh, that's funny. I'd love to read that." And then I realized I'm going to have to write it. So I had a lot of fun doing it. It's science fiction because it has to do with this reanimated corpse and all the things that plays into. But it's not. It's a romantic comedy because Frank the monster gets his freedom, goes into a graduate medical ethics program, falls in love with one of the other students, and they decide to get married. and just because I wanted to just make it as different from anything else that anybody has seen. The student that he falls in love with is Jewish, and so he's marrying into a Jewish family, and he decides to convert. So it was funny that my rabbi at my synagogue in Somerville has a book club where they pick a Jewish themed book every month, and so they did my book. And I asked her, I said, I didn't want the book to come across as like a Sunday school lesson. So I explained things that I felt people needed explained, but otherwise focused on the story and characters. And so I asked my rabbi, I said, did I get everything right? And she said yes, but there was one thing that surprised her. She's from Israel, and she was surprised when I got into a discussion of why they were not going to use Wagner's wedding march at the wedding. Because she said that simply doesn't come up in Israel. The issue never comes up. And I had a whole discussion where the mother is very upset. What do you mean we're not using the traditional music? And the bride says, my Nazi, who's practically a Nazi, he was Hitler's favorite composer. We're not playing it at the wedding.
Okay. So there are two things that just came out of what you just asked or what you just said. What kind of research did you have to do for your book?
Oh no, research is interesting. For one of my books, I was invited to speak at the Google office in Cambridge, and it was lovely. They bought copies of my book and they gave it to everybody who showed up. And I said, I want to thank you because Google has been so helpful to me in doing my research as I'm writing. And then I paused a moment and I said, of course, for all I know, you're all from the accounts receivable department. It have nothing to do with that end of Google. But yeah, the sort of research I do, like for example, the book I'm working on now has to do with a writer dealing dealing with his muse, and in fact, I've created a sort of universe where it's been over the centuries, the muses have been a pretty randy bunch, and so there were children and grandchildren, and they all get their own little ballywicks to be muses for, and I realized I didn't know a lot about the traditional muses, so I actually had to get a book to find out about the 9 muses and what their fields were, and now that's what I'm playing with. For Father of the Bride of Frankenstein, the Jewish stuff I pretty much knew. I did print out a wedding checklist that you can find these things online about. Okay, when do you get the invitations? When do you get the cake? When do you hire the band? So that I had ideas of what they were doing in the wedding planning along the way. And then there's Frank, the monster, needs a liver transplant at some point, and there's a question about whether he can go on the transplant list. Is he actually human or not? And I realized here's something I know very little about, and I went online and researched it to find out how the transplant system works. So it's not like I'm spending hours in the library researching this stuff, but it's very convenient to be working online and like in Father of the Bride of Frankenstein. I said, what song would the bride and groom dance to at the wedding? And I started doing a search for monster themed romantic music or something like that, and I came across a song I had never even heard of before called "I Want a Monster to Be My Friend," that was done by on Vogue for Sesame Street. And so I never would have found that except I Google well.
Apparently. So what was your favorite of any of the books that you've done? What was your favorite research story?
Well, that would be one of them. But like for the my most recent book, which is a satire of film criticism, an analysis of Plan 9 from Outer Space. it was suggested to me that the movie's in public domain, and so therefore we could get the script, which would be public domain. You know, we wouldn't have to pay any copyright fees for it. And so we found the script, and then I had to watch the movie several times to correct the script, because it's one thing to do a satire of this terrible movie, but if we're going to publish the script, I wanted to be exactly following the movie. So I have seen Plan 9 from Outer Space several times.
The script was different from the movie?
No, just little details, because I don't even think that what was online was like the screenplay, if there ever was a screenplay for this. Somebody did a transcript of the film, and they either made mistakes or they left things out. And so so the script that appears in the book is really, my version of that transcript. The movie the movie is such a hodgepodge. I don't know if you know the story behind it. Ed Wood, who's considered one of the worst directors of all time, he was friends with Bela Lugosi and shot some footage of Bela Lugosi, who then died. And now he's going to make a movie, and he's going to insert that footage into the movie. So, like, Bela Lugosi was actually clever enough to die before the script was written. So I guess one of the funniest things that I found out about that in my research, I'm going through the cast list, and there's a guy who's, I guess, he was known as Bunny Breckenridge, who plays the commander of the alien force. And it turns out he was, like, I think, like the great grandson of a vice president of the United States. Some of the weird facts I have in the book are actually true.
Interesting. Okay. Another question. What was your inspiration for doing that book, for the Frankenstein, the father of the Bride of Frankenstein?
Well, it was my third novel. I had done a novel about, it's a secret, about a space alien who becomes the first actual space alien to star in a movie. And it became a Hollywood satire, but it was also about first contact between Earth and aliens. So, I was playing with those tropes of science fiction. My second novel, Time in My Hands, I wanted to have fun with time travel stories, which I love. And I said, let me hit every last cliche I can think of in a time travel story and have fun with it. So, having now dealt with two major science fiction themes, I was thinking, what am I going to do next? And I happened to be I'm a science fiction, writer and fan, but I also like other genres as well. And one of my favorite genres are the classic romantic comedies. Rom-coms have a bad reputation because a lot of the current ones aren't very good. But if you go back, my book is called "I'll Have What She's Having," and I could have done just the 1930s. There were so many great romantic comedies, but I spread it out, over the decades to try to pick a few from each era. And I said, wow, I wonder if I could do, a science fiction romantic comedy. And that's, Father of the Bride of Frankenstein. I said, wow, that's an interesting mix of genres. Let's see how this plays out. One of my favorite moments in that is when they're selecting the music for the wedding. I told you about finding the En Vogue song, but what is the music that the family is going to march into the reception to? And the band decides to play the theme from the Munsters. So it says, there were two schools of thought, as far as I've been told, about writing fiction. There are some people who plan everything out, they research it, they have all the details, it's all outlined, and now they write. And then there's what they call the seat of the pants crowd. And that's
Right.
me. and like even on what I'm writing now, I know where I'm going. I know my intended end. How I'm going to get there, I'm not sure about. Now, I do some research. I do have some structure, but basically, the way I describe it is like I'm looking at a road, and I know my destination, but between here and there is a lot of fog. And as I'm writing, the fog, congeals or gets more solid, and I can now. I consider myself the first reader of the book. In fact, the story I like to tell is in my time travel book. I have a scene where the guy, the main character, his girlfriend is from 20 years in the past, and she decides she wants to move to his time period. So they're sitting on a bench, ready to move present, and they each have their little time travel device, and they close their eyes and they kind of press the button, and the narrator says, and when I opened my eyes, I was alone. And I'm going, wow, I didn't see that coming. What an interesting twist. I wonder what's going to happen. And then I realized I'm the one who's got to figure that out. So that was not something I had planned in advance. I'm writing, oh, that's an interesting twist. And now, now it's my job. As I used to tell my students when I was teaching college, if you're writing something and it's not working, you're the writer. Fix it.
Yep. Sometimes do the characters kind of tell you what's going on? Do they kind of push you in a certain direction?
Absolutely. Many writers have said this, is that, the characters take on lives of their own. There was a character in the time travel book who was in one scene. He was just a guardian of the future. Said, no, you can only go so far in the future. Then, I have to stop you beyond that. And that was all I intended him for. And then as I was writing, I realized I needed that character again later in the book. And he came back, and it was a lovely scene. I enjoyed writing, and I liked the character so much that eventually I wrote a separate short story just with that character. It was a minor character, it was supposed to be in one scene, and he's taken on his own life now.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay. So, what were the steps that you took to to bring it to from initial inspiration to a finished product?
The discipline of writing. I'm just like, all right,
Okay.
the way I work, and one of the reasons I didn't get a lot of writing done during the worst of the pandemic, excuse me, I tend to think things out, like I just wrote another chapter today for the book I'm working on, and now I'm thinking, all right, what's going to happen next? Well, I can't just like sit down and start writing it. I'll walk to the grocery store. I'm a pedestrian. I don't drive. So I'm walking to the grocery store. And as I'm walking, I'm thinking, so what am I going to do in this next chapter? What do I need to happen? Or I'll be lying in bed and thinking, where are these characters going, and get these ideas. And then once I have enough ideas for what to do next, now I'm ready to sit down and write and see where it goes. I don't plot the whole thing out, but I need to have some general ideas of what I'm going to do before I start writing.
Mm-hmm. So you're definitely a pantser.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like I said, like with Father of the Bride of Frankenstein, I knew going in what the last line of the book was going to be.
Okay.
So I knew exactly where I was going. I just didn't know how I was going to get there.
So in Father of the Bride, you knew who the characters were going to be also.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Although there were characters along the way who, like, all right, what am I going to like, for example, I have to plan the bachelor party. Now, I decided no, we were not going to have strippers. This was going to be, a classy thing. And I've learned from friends who are very into single malt scotch, who have these private parties at conventions where they share their interest in single malt scotch. Now, I'm not a single malt scotch aficionado, but they've invited me in, and I've learned, and I started using the information in the store. So, like in Father of the Bride of Frankenstein, I made the bachelor party into a scotch tasting, and I created this character who comes in a kilt with bagpipes, and they do this whole thing, and the character ended up being a secondary character, but he stuck around. He wasn't just there for the scotch tasting. In fact, they all get arrested, and once I created the character, like we talked about, they take on their own lives. They get arrested for reasons I don't have to get into in terms of the plot. But when they're exonerated in court, the guy who was leading the scotch tasting gets up and shouts, "Freedom!" And then he looks at the judge and goes, "I'm sorry, I've always wanted to do that."
Okay. So what was the biggest challenge that you had in writing and putting out Father of the Bride of Frankenstein?
The biggest challenge, the biggest challenge for me, for any of my fiction, is I tend to write concisely. I'm not long-winded. I don't have pages of this is what the weather was like, and so they tend to be short novels. And in the case of Father of the Bride of Frankenstein, I took it as far as I could. I think it was about 70 or 80,000 words, which is a short novel. And so even with an afterword and acknowledgments, I felt I got to put something else in there. And I told the publisher, I said, I have a short story that was published in a book that almost immediately went out of print, and I really like the short story. Let's stick it in there as a bonus. But then I'm always very conscious of word count. I don't want to pad things. I don't want people to feel, oh, please get to the point already. I'm not going. No offense, but I'm not George R.R. Martin. I'm not claiming he's padding, but he writes door stoppers, and I don't. So that's just a writing style.
Okay. So which character did you like or hate the most?
Well, the one from the time travel book, the Guardian,
Okay.
who gets. I had fun because he's an official, and he has an important job to do. But when he meets the protagonist, who is the guy who invented the time travel device, the guy gets so excited he becomes like a little. He was an old man. He's a little boy. He says, "I played you in a pageant in school." So I had fun. I had fun with that. Um, I also on a comic, a more serious note. Again, in this, I should hold up the book here. Time in My Hands: My Misadventures in Time Travel. Um, the main character starts out like in the 1990s, and he goes back to the 1970s. And so at one point, he's visiting his girlfriend at Thanksgiving in, I think it was 1979. Do you know what happened at that time? Because this is something I had to research, and it was not, I remembered living through it, but I had to research it to get it right for the book. It was the Jonestown Massacre. So he goes back, and his girlfriend is in tears, and she's got the TV on, and she goes, "You must have known about this. Why didn't you warn me?" And he had to explain, I was a little kid at the time, and my mother pretended the TV was broken, so we didn't have it on. And I had to play out how they would have followed it over that time. But I get to the end of that chapter. I said, I'm trying to write a comic novel here. And she goes, suppose you stayed in your own time. What were people talking about when you left to come here? He said, "Oh, the impeachment of President Clinton." She goes, "Oh my God, the impeachment of the president. What did he do? Like, start a war, sell secrets?" "Oh no, he had an affair with an intern." And she just bursts out laughing. She goes, "I want to go to your time. It sounds very silly."
Okay. So what can we expect from you in the near future?
Well, in the near future, to two projects. This is, well, near future. This is like, basically plotting out what I'm doing for the next year or so. One, I'm working on a novel now about a writer of humorous fiction who wants to get beyond the stuff he's doing, and he's looking for a new muse. And he basically he's traveling, or I'm not quite sure how we're going to play this out, but the woman he's traveling with is herself a muse, but she has nothing to do at the moment because she was the muse for Blockbuster video store owners. And so I set them out that the two of them are going to meet each of the 9 traditional muses and let that play out in a way. So I'm working on that. And the other thing, and I asked my publisher, I said, it's been now 14 years since Jar Jar Binks died. I said, I've written a lot of criticism, essays on science fiction movies. I wonder if I have enough for another book. And my publisher lit up. He goes, "Well, yes, I would definitely be interested in that." So I have a feeling I've got at least 2 more books in me.
Okay, great. That sounds good. All right. Now I have questions about you about being a writer. What is your favorite part about being a writer on the whole writing and publishing process?
Hard to say, single out any one thing. The one thing I, having now over the last, oh God, like 25 years done, I think I'm up to like 10 or 11 books, and plus anthologies that I have short stories in. Getting that first copy of the new book doesn't get old. When,
Okay.
it doesn't matter how many books I've done. Here's my new one, and I open up the envelope or the box, however it's being shipped to me, and there it is. And after all that work, here is the actual book. That's still exciting.
Okay. And what do you consider the most challenging part of the whole writing process? And how do you overcome it?
Well, what I used to tell my students, I used to quote Mario Puzo, the author of The Godfather, who
Mm,
said the real work of writing is rewriting. And
mm,
so go reading over my material over and over and over, going, there's a better word there, or that joke doesn't quite make sense, or I can fix this, and keep fixing it. And I forget who said this, but somebody said the real writer, even after it's in print, still wants to fix things. It's maybe that's it.
yep.
It's I gotta let this go.
Hmm. Yep. Absolutely. What has been your favorite adventure during your entire writing career?
Uh, meeting my readers. I've been, well, I've been reading since I was a kid, and it got very exciting when I started going to science fiction conventions and got to meet some of the authors that I had read. As a movie critic, I've interviewed celebrities, and I've gotten to interview various people, but like I got to meet Robert Sheckley when Nesfa Press did a collection of his that they let me do a blurb for the Dust Jacket, and he was. This is obviously before he died. He was at a Boscone convention where the book was being launched, and I said, "Could somebody bring me over and introduce me?" And I come over. This is a guy who's a big influence on me, And before I could say a word, he looks up and goes, "Thank you for those kind words on the dust jacket." And I go, "Oh, what a perfect fanboy moment. I'm meeting one of my idols and he's thanking me."
Yeah, that is nothing like that. Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, that, and then being on the other side of that transaction, meeting readers. Like just recently, I did a reading at a convention, and people were telling me how excited they were. They can't wait to get my next book. I go, I have fans. Like if you're Stephen King, yes, of course you have fans, but I'm not in that league. So, getting to meet people and say, "Oh, I can't wait to get your next book," or better yet, I'm standing by my publisher's table in the dealer's room, and we're all masked because the convention required people to be masked in public places. And I'm standing there, and somebody comes up next to me, and he's looking at my books. He goes, "Oh, I really like that one. I read that one twice. Oh, I don't have that one. I'm going to buy it." And he picks it up, and he's getting ready to buy it. I just lean over and go, "Would you like an autograph?" But I mean, it's thrilling to me that there are people who really like my stuff. One of my somebody told me she had bought my book and was looking for it and couldn't find it. She knew she bought it and brought it home, and then she hears laughter from her daughter's bedroom. Her daughter had taken the book and was reading it. She's going, "Mom, this is hilarious." Yeah, I love getting that sort of feedback.
Okay. So, what is the greatest lesson that you've learned thus far in your writing career?
Huh. Right, well, I don't know. That's hard to say. I guess over the last few years where I'm writing, I'm doing film reviews, I do other stuff, but I haven't been doing a lot of fiction, and it's I guess it's needing to have that inspiration. And that's why I'm so excited about the project I'm working on now. It's like it's the first time in excuse me, like in 3 or 4 years that I'm going, I can't wait to get back to this. It's hard when I want to write, and it's not I'm not blocked. There's nothing I want to write about. That's the hard part.
Hmm. Okay. Good point.
Looking for
So,
my own views.
okay. So, what piece of advice would you want to give other writers?
First, if you write, I used to tell this to my students. I said, someday you're going to write something, and the first draft is going to be so good that you'll look at it, you'll okay, let me just fix the typos and punctuation, and it's done and it's perfect. I go, treasure that moment. It doesn't happen very often. Like I said, the quote Puzo, the real job of the writer is rewriting. You've got to be able to go over your stuff again and again. And I would also suggest getting, I mean, there are some people who are official beta readers. I'm going to give my manuscript to a stranger and get feedback on it. I don't do that. But trusted friends who will give you honest answers, not just pat you on the back and go, "Oh, nice job, Dan." Um, for my novels, I've had people read through it and go, "Tell me what works, what doesn't. Was there something that was confusing, something that needed further explanation?" That's important to get that kind of honest feedback.
Okay. And are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that you would recommend to other writers that might have helped you in your career?
Um, Not well. As somebody who's writing in genres, science fiction, fantasy stuff, going to conventions and and meeting people and meeting other writers and going to panel discussions and meeting readers and things like that is helpful. Not so much of like a writers group. I've been part of that, and it's not useful to get feedback, but nothing really like official. But my publisher, Ian Randall Strock, Fantastic Books, I met at a convention, and in fact, when he was editor of a magazine, and I started doing film essays for him, science fiction for this magazine, which has since gone out of business. But then he became the publisher of Fantastic Books. So when I proposed Jar Jar Binks Must Die, which was my first book for him, I'm waiting and waiting for an answer. And finally, I go, Ian, he's a friend as well as my publisher and editor. I go, Ian, are you going to take the book? And he goes, of course I'm going to take the book. I bought some of those essays in the first place. So, making those kind of connections, can be helpful. I've had some major league, star authors do blurbs for my books because I've gotten to know them. Like one of the nicest writers, and I'm a big fan of his books, but one of the nicest writers in science fiction is Robert Sawyer. And when I was nominated for a Hugo for Jar Jar Binks Must Die and then lost, he was more upset than I was. And we're sitting around, a bunch of us having drinks after the Hugo Awards, and he oh, I can't believe they gave it to. And I said to Ian, get him to do a blurb for the next book, which he did.
Wow. Wow. Okay, that's great. Okay, now I have questions about you as a person.
All right.
What is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
People who don't know me are surprised that I am a lifelong pedestrian. I have never had a driver's license. I had a learner's permit and took driver's ed in high school, and that was the last time I was behind the wheel of a car. I do not drive, and the world is a better place for it.
That is a decision that you made yourself. You just
Yes,
said, I don't want to drive.
Yes, to me, I would be a white knuckle driver. The stress would just be too much. As I said, I'm doing the world a favor.
Interesting. Okay. I guess there are some people that don't like to drive. Yeah.
No, in fact, I collect names of when I come across somebody famous who was a non-driver, or the famous humor columnist Art Buchwald was a non-driver, and he did a column where he's trying to cash a check at the bank, and they go, "Can we see your driver's license?" And he goes, "I don't have a driver's license. Here's my White House press pass. You need Secret Service clearance for that." And he has the teller responding, "Oh, anybody can get that. Where's your driver's license?"
Oh, well, yeah, anybody could get a White House press pass. Oh, yeah. Okay. Is there any question that you would wish interviewers would ask you? And what would your answer be?
Oh. I don't know about why somebody doesn't ask me this, but in terms of my fiction, I'm definitely a humorist. I started doing humor columns in high school, and that's what my fiction writing has always been. Why that instead of writing the great American novel? I couldn't tell you. It's just that's who I am. That's how I see the world, and I like making people laugh. So I maybe in another life I would be a stand-up comedian, but instead I'm writing books.
Okay. So the question would be, what would the question be? Why are you not a comedian?
Well, why comedy? Why is that my outlet? Because that's the way I express myself.
Okay. Why comedy? Yeah. Right. So what is or are your passions when you're not writing? And how do you make time to do the things that you love?
Uh, well, there's my family, particularly my daughter who got married a little over a year ago, and I, they're very happy. I love my son-in-law. He's a great guy. Every year for his birthday, I get him Omaha steaks, because he loves steak and I can't eat red meat anymore. So I said, please enjoy it for me. So I love cooking. And since I got my own place, I get to do a lot of cooking and trying out new recipes. And I'm not I'm not much of a like a video game person, but there were two online games that I've gotten hooked on. One is Wordle, and I was very disappointed.
Oh, yeah.
The highest streak I've gotten is 110, and I just learned the other day my mother has topped 200.
Wow.
Yeah, thanks, Mom. And the other thing is the Microsoft solitaire games. I play those every day. I find, I don't want to. I don't want to do shooting games. I don't want to do competitive games. I like the puzzle aspect.
Mm, okay. And how do you make time to do those things?
It's well, cooking. It's I I gotta eat, so I have to
Okay,
and I'm
that
and
answers
in
that.
recent years I've been trying to eat healthier, and have lost weight, and I'm very pleased with that. I tell people I have the world's greatest cookbook to get recipes from, Google, because I can like Google recipes with for chicken or with this ingredient. I once had a recipe for an Irish chicken dish that called for a leek, and ordinarily you buy leeks in bunches. And so now I had two leeks. I said, I'm not going to make this dish three times. So I went online. Give me recipes that call for two leeks. Potato leek soup. It was delicious.
Yep, great.
So that and I make time for that. And like Wordle, it's like first things often if I'm up late, it's the last thing. Oh, it's after midnight. The new Wordle is up, and I'll do that, and it takes a few minutes, and it's just part of my routine. And I do crossword puzzles, so I print those out. I have I have crossword puzzles stacked up, and then all right, I'm waiting for a bus or something, pull out a puzzle, or uh, or a book. I am a reader as well.
Hmm.
You
Well,
can't
most writers are.
got all those shelves behind you, but you've got a bookstore. You've got an excuse. My bookcase is to the side, so you can't see the books I got stacked up there. But yes, I do have a lot of books.
That was my next question, actually. What does your writing space look like?
My writing space. Well, I'm in a one-bedroom apartment, which I love. It's a 19th century water pumping station that was converted into apartments
Oh,
in Somerville, and I love my location. It's the second floor of a two-story building. I look out the window. Across the street from me is the Mystic River. So,
nice.
now, in the summer, all the trees have leaves. You can't see the river, but right now I can look out my window and I can see the river. So that's nice. So I don't play music. I don't like to be distracted. I like to focus on what I'm doing. But if I need to like just sit back for a moment, I can look out, watch the traffic. I have a cat. The cat likes to look out the window. They call it cat TV. So I'll watch a little cat TV before I get back to work.
So you just answered like three of my questions all at once. Um, so,
Don't
so
try this at home, kids.
one of my questions was, um, did authors have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions to help them with their work? And do you have any, which you do?
Yes.
And do
Yeah, oh,
they
I've been a
help or
cat
hinder
person.
you?
Yeah, I've been a cat person since I was 5 years old. And when I when I was on my own after my marriage ended, I was living with roommates, so I couldn't get a cat. So when I got my own place, it was finally time to get a cat, and it was good timing. It was February of 2020, just
Mhm.
before the lockdown. So I
Perfect
have this
time.
wonderful companion who you will not see because the downside of that is she's fun and affectionate and playful with me. She never really got socialized with other people. So, like, if my daughter and son-in-law come over, she vanishes. But I could be sitting on the couch watching TV, and she'll come over and put her head in my lap and demand attention.
When you're writing,
Excuse me.
does she help or hinder you?
No, she usually leaves me alone when I'm writing, unless there's a space in her food bowl. Then she will come right next to me and look up at me very plaintively and meow until I get the message.
Of course. Of course, I want my food. I don't care what you're writing.
As the joke goes, cats were worshipped as gods in ancient Egypt, and they've never forgotten it.
Yep. Yes, we are cat servants. Okay. And you said you don't listen to music or anything like that. So when you're
No,
writing,
I like music, but not. It's distracting when I'm writing.
okay, exactly. So you like silence. You
Yeah,
prefer silence. All right. And do you have to have anything to eat or drink while you're writing or editing?
I have to have my regular meals. I'm
Well,
not.
while you're eating, while you're eating, while you're writing or editing.
No, no,
Okay.
not as part of the writing process.
You're not a coffee fiend, so you don't have to
No,
have
no,
10
quite the
cups of
opposite.
coffee.
One cup of coffee a day is my usual limit.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Okay.
not, when, the, like, the people who just have the pot going all day, if I've had one cup, that's usually more than enough.
Okay. So has New England played a part in your writing?
Well, obviously, I'm, attending the events here and making connections here. Um, well, and in fact, I should,
Yes.
yes, that was the cue for this. Back in the 80s, a friend and I wrote a screenplay called Banned in Boston about an anti pornography group that was facing bankruptcy. And they realized they were never succeeding. They would protest against the movie, and the movie would become a success. So they decided they were going to produce their own dirty movie, protested against it, and then make the money when it became a success. And the script, we never were able to sell it, but my writing partner in the project, who's out in California, found a copy of the screenplay and she novelized it and sent it to me, and I went through it, and it's come out as Banned in Boston. So this is my one non-science fiction thing and collaboration, but it's very much a humorous thing of set in the Boston area of the 1980s.
I had to ask you that question because I was waiting to hear about that book.
Yeah, I don't always have like well, obviously, it's a secret. It's a Hollywood story, so it was set in in Southern California. Although I do have the aliens land in the Catskills because I was a Catskills busboy in the 70s, and I was able to use that for my time travel story. A lot of it takes place on a college campus, and I said, what campus do I know like the back of my hand? Well, where I went to school, the University of Rochester. So I set the story there, and another writer who went there several years after me was one of the people who read the book, and she said she felt like she was visiting the campus.
Oh, wow. Okay. I just have two more questions for you.
Okay.
Where can people get your books? Aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, we can order your books that are in print. And you can get Daniel's books if you call us at 508-796-5613 or email us at orders@anniesbooksworcester.com. And where else can people find your books?
Generally online or at conventions. Most of the books, except for Banned in Boston, are published by Fantastic Books. So if Ian has a table at a convention, he'll have my books there. And in fact, I'm going to arrange with him to have Banned in Boston on the table on consignment so that my fans can discover it. And Fantastic Books also has their own website. And of course, there are various online dealers. But since, you have a bookstore in Worcester, and I used to be the film critic for the Worcester Telegram and Gazette.
Oh, okay.
Going to your bookstore, and when they don't find my books on the shelves, go order it and order extra copies and put it on display with a little spotlight on it.
Okay. All right then. So how can we follow your work and share your awesomeness?
My movie reviews appear on a website called northshoremovies.net. And you'll have to subscribe or find a place that gets Space and Time magazine, where I do a column called Take Two on the Movies, where I'm writing about classic science fiction films. Some more recent ones, but basically I'm not reviewing the latest. I want people to go back and see other films. Those are the two genre-related outlets. I also do work mostly signed for a website called On the Issues that is totally different from everything we've talked about so far. It's a nonpartisan political website where I research various candidates and their positions on issues, and then provide quotes and links. And we're not taking sides. We're saying this is where this candidate stands on these issues. And I'm a political junkie, so I have a lot of fun doing that.
Wow. Okay. You have a website?
The website is called ontheissues.org.
Oh, your website.
Oh, I try. I'm not. If you want to find information about me and my publications, go to Goodreads.
Okay.
And look up Daniel M. Kimmel. I've tried a couple of times to do a website. I am just not technically inclined. And when I was trying to figure out, all right, how do I get into this and add a new book that's come out? It's like I would have to relearn everything. It's not intuitive to me. I'm not a technical person. So
okay.
Goodreads is easy enough, and they do allow you to send questions to the author if people want to get in touch with me.
Okay, so goodreads.com.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dan, for joining me today, and hopefully we will see you at our store sometime.
I'd love to come out there.
Great. Daniel Kimmel, and we will be seeing you. Thanks.